Hi folks, so I just wanted to do a bit of a video on the U-block garden, just to give everyone a bit of a background and also point out some of the features of interest and some of the stuff you can harvest from the garden. So this whole project, try and get in the background there, began with a proposal I put in for a sustainable technologies and recycling hub in the U-block and N-block area. So it was one of a number of different proposals, but this is the one that got up. And it kind of started with my own home, where I set up a organic food garden with aquaponics, wicking beds, a whole range of different technologies. And I opened it up for Sustainable House Day, so I'd have people coming in and doing tours. I also used to do tours for high school groups, so they'd come in and I'd introduce them to the aquaponics so they could go and develop their own within the school. And related was talks I used to do about marine plastics, so reducing waste, marine cleanups, things like that. So it was really part of an outreach and awareness program. And the idea was that people would come here and they'd be introduced to the technologies. There was even some talk at one stage about putting together a professional development course for high school teachers on aquaponics. So I'll quickly take you around. I'll leave the actual aquaponics till last, and I think initially I might just talk about the garden and what's growing in there so that people can see straight away what can be harvested. So everybody knows about the dragon fruit, so that's been super productive. This is something I came up with. It's the idea of raising the plants up out of the moisture. So I started this at home because I had a lot of clay and things like that, and a lot of problems with waterlogging. So obviously, being a cacti, dragon fruit don't like to have wet feet. So I came up with this idea where you actually grow the plants in a plastic container that's been cut in half, so the roots can actually grow down into the ground, but they're also in fairly dry conditions. It's also good for small spaces, I find. Anyway, we all know about the dragon fruit, so that's been highly productive, and what we do is we collect those and we make some money for the garden by selling them. We've got a few citrus. Again, I took a similar approach here with the containers, more just to save space and kind of train the roots a little bit so they go down and they don't interfere with other things we're growing. I'll come back and talk about the beds. Another citrus, that one's actually a lime, and that one hasn't done too well, but unfortunately it's a bit shaded there. So just generally with the garden, the sun comes from the north, so this end of the garden here gets fairly shaded over winter, so you can see there's a lot of low growing stuff, and also because the light's coming from that direction up there, I put the bigger plants at the back there, okay, so they're not shading anything else. And you can see obviously that citrus there is in a really good spot. It gets more light than virtually anything else, and the dragon fruit of course. So basically going from the back to the front here, the plants at the back get a lot more light. Okay, so I'll just talk through some of the stuff we've got growing here. So in this corner near the fire hydrant, we've got pepinos, which produce a fruit like that. There we go, that's pretty small. It gets to, you know, probably three or four times that size, and when it turns a yellowy color and starts to get these purple stripes on it, that means it can be eaten. It's very similar to a rock melon or something like that in taste. So the pepino's taken over a lot of the space here. There's actually a bed buried in here. This is one of the aquaponics beds. It's actually a bed that's permanently full of water. There are a few things you can eat here. This is actually a type of spinach. Doesn't look too healthy at the moment, but it can be steamed, you know, and used as a vegetable. In the back here we've got a type of cress. Okay, that's very nice. You don't have to do anything to that. You can just eat it in salads. Up the back there we've got turmeric, which is harvested once a year, once all of that vegetation dies down. We've got some rosemary. Help yourself to that. Just come along and pick up and cut off bits to use in your cooking. the lime, which I mentioned. I have got some parsley growing underneath here. A couple of different types I've just replanted. There was some growing along here as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't do particularly well in winter, again because of the shading. It's on the shaded side. Tangelo, that's just finished producing. Super productive tree. In the center here, this is where I put all the annuals, so I've just replanted. I've got some sugar peas here which will grow up these trellises on both sides, and I've got some purple carrots and some broccoli. I've done that on both sides, so I've got 2 beds there with broccoli and purple carrot. Down the bottom here we've got, and all along here, arrowroot. So arrowroot's a bit of a mystery for most people. Basically what you'd need to do is dig around and get one of these corms from the bottom here, so they look like that when you pull them out, and you just cut off all of the husk, which is fairly tough, and you eat the inner part. Now you can treat this a bit like potatoes, so you can put it in stews and things like that. Okay, boil it up. It takes a little bit longer to cook than potato. You can also shred it very finely and use it as a thickener for sauces. And of course, if you're really keen, you could dry it, powder it, and use it for making biscuits. Oh, and if you've got chickens, they love eating the leaves. And main thing I use the stems and the leaves for here is composting. So this is comfrey here. Okay, most people don't eat that. It's got a lot of silicates in it and things like that. It can be eaten and used in, and people use it for traditional medicine as well. But I mainly use it as a compost activator. So all of this stuff, or anything else from the garden that's not being used, ends up back in the compost here. And what I used to do before COVID was to get all of the food scraps from the staff room and also the coffee grains, and they'd go into the compost, and we have a beautiful compost here. So I'm not doing that at the moment. It'd be good to restart it, but at the moment what I'm doing is just taking any scraps from the garden and putting in here. And it's really important to compost, because otherwise you'd have to keep adding soil here. I mean, you can see I'm already adding organic matter through the mulch. So I get about 4 bales of mulch maybe twice a year. You may have noticed with pots and things like that, the soil level will go down, and that's because you're constantly taking out of the soil. So the plants are taking all the nutrients they need, you're harvesting the crops and things like that, so you always need to be adding organic matter back in, or soil of some sort back into the system. So that's what we do here. So this is essentially the heart of the garden, really. I mean, this is where all of the nutrients and everything go back in to feed everything else. Now, just out of interest, I used to have black soldier fly farms at home, and I built one here just as a bit of an experiment, with limited success. The commercial ones work a lot better than these, but the idea is that you can use black soldier fly to process food scraps that you wouldn't normally put into the compost. I have actually got a worm farm as well, but again, I'm not using any of these at the moment because I'm not getting scraps coming into the system from the staff room. But basically the stuff that can't go into a worm farm or into the compost can go to the black soldier fly, so citrus, meat, things like that. And you can actually harvest the black soldier fly themselves, use them for feed for chickens, for fish, and so forth. Okay, so very quick run through of the aquaponics. This is the electronics, and also I use this for storing things for the garden like fertilizer and tools and things like that. So if you're looking for anything, it'll probably be in here. I've also got seeds and that in there that plant at different times. This timber here covers the fish tank down the bottom here and the sump over there. At the moment there's no fish in there because the system needs an upgrade, so it needs a new filtration system and so forth, so it's in a bit of a mess, and there's also a few things that need repair. The water from the fish tank, it circulates, and then there's a drain in the center. It goes down into a sump in here, and from the sump it's distributed via these airlift pumps into either the fish tank or to the grow beds. So these are the grow beds. You can see the way they're designed, they're raised up, so that means that the space underneath can also be used. That's really important when you've only got a small space to use for a garden. I do this at home as well. So we're growing at the top there, and we're also growing at the bottom with the roots and things like that. So this is all weeds at the moment. It all needs cleaning out. This bed's actually started to subside. Unfortunately, I didn't listen when I was told to reconcrete that one as well as the others. We actually reconcreted all of these a few years ago, but I thought that I was using that as a reference, so I didn't do it, so my bad. Anyway, the water fills up into here and then periodically drains. So there's an auto siphon over there. It drains into a small container, and then the water flows back through the wicking bed in the center there, which I showed you before, which is used for growing our perennials. It also flows through this bed here. As I said, this has a constant water level. So these plants are all water plants. They're tolerant of having their roots in water constantly. So it flows through there, through here, and then back into the sump where it's redistributed again. So the other thing to mention, I've shown you some of this signage. This was for high school visits. We have signage all the way around which shows the system and explains how it works. And as I say, there's a fair bit of work that needs to be done on this system, so it's kind of in a bit of a state of disrepair at the moment. I'd love to get both of those beds working again so we can start growing things. Normally I put annuals in there as well, so basically that side of the garden is the most productive because of the sun, so that's where all of the grow beds are, and then you've got the more shade tolerant things down this corner here. If anyone has any questions about the garden, then just flick me an email or put a message in the comments, and I can talk through some of the stuff that we've got here. But I just wanted to do a quick video to show the setup and hopefully prompt people to come in and start using some of the produce. So particularly the arrowroot and things like that, which doesn't tend to get used very much. I thought a bit of awareness might help to get people in and using the system. So just one other thing I was going to mention, there used to be a cube here, a glass cube, which had pictures of this area. They're all over campus at one stage, and I did a recording about the aquaponics, so people could actually come through if they had an app on their phone, and they could actually listen to the story of the aquaponics. However, I think it's been removed now. I can't seem to see it, so that's a bit of a pity. But anyway, the signage around here should help. It probably needs to be replaced, some of it, but it gives you an idea of how the system works. So just have a wander around. Each side of the garden has one of these metal signs. This one actually shows how the wicking bed was made in the centre, so if people are interested in wicking beds. This is obviously not a typical way of building one, but the idea is that you have a reservoir on the bottom, which is separated from the soil at the top by a geotextile fabric, and the water can actually wick up into the soil. The plants aren't stinging water, so that keeps them nice and healthy, but they've got access to a water supply from below, so it's just more water efficient. I use wicking beds a lot at home, and they're really effective. So I think personally, in terms of like the aquaponics and stuff like that, if I was going to suggest any technology here, it would be the wicking beds. So if you want more information about wicking beds, just have a look online. The main thing is that you have, again, a reservoir at the bottom which has your water in. Usually it's mostly full of sand with pipes to allow the water to get in, and then you have that 25 to 30 centimeters of soil at the top where the plants grow in.